Howdy, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about this Mystery Starkiller Variant number 12. Very unique take on this. I'm not sure how much the client decided on the input on this, but this green, I'm digging it. I'm digging this hunter green, especially with the brass. This kind of just has a different take. So yeah, classical Starkiller appointments. We've got mostly hand machined by Nick, obviously with his baked on enamel color. Some found parts, a lot of machine parts like this low profile tactile switch box. We've got dome tactiles in here. So our top is going to be our main and our bottom is going to be our aux. And then, yeah, we've got our exposed crystal chamber. It's being lit by a single Neopixel from below with a 50-50 like PCB style. In the back, there's a strip with some diffusion behind it. And that is 2020 strips. For the most part, I've programmed each preset for that just to come on in the on state and not to overpower the crystal in the off state. There may be a couple exceptions where I've varied from that just to mix it up, make something cool. This does come with a provided blade plug, and we do have this giant back knob as our blade retention. So we just unscrew that. Our cool little blade plug comes out. I think these come from the Infinity line. These are really nice. They're just made of brass. And then up top, we have our Shtok Eco V4 Neopixel with like 30 or 32, I forget how many, 15 accents on there. Those just mimic what the main blade does. And then how we get to everything is we've got our kind of hidden, quote unquote, set screw on the side. So you just line that up with this. If you're looking at the crystal chamber on the right side. So we'll undo that set screw. And you definitely want to lift it out so that it's not going to scratch up the internal parts of the saber. And then we've got my resin greeblie chassis. I did a couple different things here, which I'll talk about down on the table. But then we have another lower crystal chamber also being lit by a single 50-50 PCB. And then my greeblie accents with a bunch of different chassis. So let's talk about those specific guys. We'll come down so we can get a close-up view, and I'll switch through some presets and we'll see all those different accent pixels change. So yeah, let's do that now. Let's hop down to the table. Okie doke. So again, here we are. We've got the provided plaque, our blade plug. This is mine, but I left the provided Allen key in the bag with the sticker. And so our set screw there for our grip retention, and then the hilt itself. So we can see that crystal chamber again. Let me start it up muted so you can see the chassis, the crystal strip back lighting. Oops, didn't double tap fast enough. There we go. If you double tap power, you start the saber muted. So on this is the Starfall preset. So you can see I did like a dark orange for the lower crystal, but a red for the main. These are all independently programmable. So over here to the side, we can see we've got 2020 strips subbladed into 2. Let me turn this down just a hair. And again, just like that, we've got a red strip and a yellow strip, or gold, I think is the color. They're doing the same animation in the on state, and in the off state, they're just subdivided to do different colors. We've got a Shadowfoil accent PCB with 7 15-15 Neopixels, 6 in a ring, and a center one that's subbladed to do something different. So this is kind of hidden underneath this cool little greeblie. We've got a 28mm KR bass speaker. I did close off the ends to fully enclose it, so it's plenty loud. I had a couple Proffie V3s that I decided to get in a different colorway. Normally I choose black or white, whatever's available. I got one, I think this is yellow was the color. It could be like a see-through-ish green, I'm not really sure. And then we've got an Edison filament. And then we've got my 18650 battery wrap. Our kill switch is right here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that battery just so we can see the Starfall logo. I did a little bit of accent there. And then we've got our positive terminal clearly indicated, but as always, spring sides are negative. And when you go to put the battery in, always put the nipple to the nipple. And then we can rotate this so we've got my battery wrap. I will say this is back in the holiday time period, I bought an airbrush for a different project, and then also to save on like primer and clear coats and stuff like that. However, I still used a clear coat on this, but I used the airbrush to both prime this and use the all clad brass. But because I still had some leftover rattle can clear, I used that, not realizing that they're different materials. So what it did was it took this brass and kind of knocked it down. But I thought that kind of matched the vibe because it still has a brass-ish color. But again, I'm not really sure how well this is showing up on camera, but it's also kind of got this green tint to it. So it's not quite the brass of the rods, but I do have also, you know, some hand-painted colors in there with both copper and silver, and then I did the heat stain pigment on this baffled greeblie with the Edison filament. And so you can see like there's a rub and buff brass, but yeah, just, I don't know, I kind of dug it. Again, little splashes of color here and there. And yeah, so if we turn this back on, so we'll go through a couple different presets. So again, let me turn this back down. One thing I like to do on the Edison filaments is to program it so that it's not fully bright. And then that way in the on or off state, it'll go to like a half level, and then the clashes or lockups will go to full brightness. So here we can just see a pulsing effect in the on state. So let me turn it on with mute so I can talk over it. So you can sort of see it did the little bit of flashing there for the ignition. And then if I hit a blaster, you can sort of see it brighten up and then kind of do that. But if I lock up, now we get those strobe effects, and then now it's just back off. So, and then as you know, as always, the other accents will do something different in the on and off states, and they will also respond to clashes or blasters or lockups. So that goes bright, lockup. Same thing with the crystal chamber, right? They respond. And then I'm holding aux for lockup. So yeah. And then like I said, the emitter is just going to mimic what the main blade does. So while you do kind of see some blast, you'll notice it's like just on these lower ones. So yeah. All right, so let's turn this back up just a smidge so we can see. Again, we'll go over that paint job real quick. So the config is on the SD card. This is running OS 8.10. So latest and greatest on Proffie. I'll have a printout with all of the instructions for things that I don't cover in this demo. But you can always go to like the FET263 website to learn more. So start this one up. So you can see like we got a purple crystal, but then a yellowish backlit accent. And then this one's a little bit more erratic than this one. And then you got magenta over here. And then this one. There we go.
Hero's Journey.
And you can see the difference. There's a green crystal here and like an aqua color there. So all of these can be programmed independently if you choose to. So here's an example of where I did in the off state, turn the backlit crystal strip on. All right, so let's put the grip back on. When you put the grip on, we just want to line that up. You can sort of see where it's been marred from that set screw pressing down. Just line that up, fully engage that. And then we'll switch over here. This takes a 1-inch diameter Neopixel blade. I'm going to use my 7/8 Quantum with a 1-inch adapter. I will say on this guy though, our blade retention is this big twisty knob at the back. So definitely want to make sure that's fully engaged, especially on this thing, because it's just above the emitter. So it's only really gripping on like the lower 1/4 inch of the blade. So you definitely want to make sure you're seated on that when you go to light this up. But once it's in, it's solid. It's not going anywhere. So to start in regular mode, hit power. This particular font has a pre-on, which we'll only get if we hit power. We do have gesture on, so we have twist on and thrust on as our gestures. Those will get you into battle mode. You also have twist off. If you do a gesture, you will bypass a pre-on, and then like I said, you'll be in battle mode. So again, there's that pre-on, so we're in regular mode, which means regular clashes are just gonna get glancing blows. Our Ox will do blaster blocks, but if we wanna do a lockup, we either hold power or Ox as we clash. Right. And for as long as we're holding that button, we'll be in control of the lockup. However, if we do a gesture, we'll be in battle mode. So we bypass the pre-on, right? If we do lightly tap, we'll get those glancing clash effects, right? But if we go above a certain threshold, we'll engage a lockup, right? You can still move it around a little bit, but when you pull out of that position, you'll disengage the lockup. Now, lockups also are tip effects, so if we're sideways, we'll get our melt, right? Until we pull out. If we're pointing down, we'll get drag. And that's the nice thing about battle mode is you don't have to be holding the buttons to do that. But if you're one that likes to be in a little bit more control, then you can just do regular mode.
Reconcile.
So when the blade is on, if we want to change the blade color on the fly, you can hold Aux and tap power. Now for each preset, if there's a character that it's based on, I'll have put the voice pack that Brian Connor did into
White.
that.
Red.
So
orange, red. Dark orange.
So this is
Orange.
This is Ewan McGregor, so I think this is newer Obi-Wan. If we like that color, we'll hit power to accept, but
Dark orange.
I'm gonna hit revert, which is Aux.
Revert.
Now, a note about on the fly color change, it will only affect the main blade color. It will not affect any of the chassis accent colors. If you want to program all of that on the fly, you would do that with edit mode, which again, I'll have a printout that goes through the menu system. There are a number of blades here. We've got our main blade, our crystal strip. We've got the 2 different strip accents. We've got the circle PCB. We've got the inner of the circle, and then we've got that Edison filament. And those are all different blades you can program. So if you get into edit mode, it'll get like deep into the sub menu systems. And then you can also turn main blade color, off color, clash color, blast color, lockup color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it can get kind of confusing. Again, I'll have a printout, but if you start to get into the idea that you want to program these to do some customizations, I've included my config file on the SD card, and then I have a template of a preset that's just in comments. And it's just a copy paste job. You'll take that template, you'll paste it, you'll put in the font folder, the track, and then each of your blade styles, and then you'll have a new preset. So you can get a lot farther with edit mode. The only exception to the color change rule is Horn. When we ignite the saber, if we do hold Aux and tap power, we're actually just going to get into quick change color mode. So it's a dual phase where it'll wipe to purple. And then the crystal will match. So it goes from a white to a purple. Right? And that's color change direct. Again, any other blade, if you do Aux and tap power, you can go through the wheel and you can do it that way. With the OS voice pack, if you want a quick, way to check the battery, hold Aux tap power when the blade's off.
Battery level 92%. percent.
So we're on a preset where there isn't a character, I didn't think to put one. So the main one that's in the common folder is Starkiller, because this is a Starkiller hilt. If we hold power and tap aux, we can get into the volume menu. And I generally program these to a certain level, but then I'll back it off because these 28mm speakers can get pretty loud.
Enter volume menu.
So
volume menu end.
Battery level.
the last preset is a battery level preset. So even though we can get the battery level on the fly, what I like to do is just have this here. There's also a little Easter egg on here, but all of the chassis accents will go from green, the same with the crystal, go from green to red, green being a good charge, red, or, it'll get down to yellow and orange and stuff like that. If you do start to hear audio artifacts and you see, like if you're on this preset and it's way down here, or if you see this color is kind of amber, you may start to hear speaker crackle. That just means charge your battery. So again, this is programmed for a 36-inch blade length or 132 neopixels. If you decide to buy a smaller blade, say like a 32, it may still work, but what you can do is get into the edit mode settings, and then you can get into edit blade length for the main blade, and you can just rotate the saber until you see one single white pixel as your last neopixel, and then save that as your length, and it'll do that. But generally speaking, that's it. So to the customer, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. When we're done, we can undo our thumb screw here, pull our blade out, pop our blade plug back in, right? Again, this is a 1-inch blade, and then we'll take our Allen key, remove that set screw, enough so that we're not going to scratch up the hilt or the chassis, but not all the way off so we lose it. And then we'll hit that kill switch, everything turns off, and we're good to go. There are a number of other features I didn't cover. If you're curious, you can check the printout. I also cover a lot of the main stuff in a lot of my older videos. So I've done a number of these Starkillers. If you want to just go watch some of those, the main functions like, track player, force player, all that stuff will be on there, as well as certain lockups. But again, there will be a printout that it will come with the hilt. It'll cover most of the main functions. If you have any questions, again, feel free to comment or call. Feel free to email me. But I highly recommend reading the printout, or to go to, at the very last page, there's a link to the FET263 config, or kind of the prop file for the buttons. Go to FET263 site. This is using his prop file, so all of the features that come with his prop file are in there. In fact, I'm not even sure I know all of them. I don't necessarily turn all of them on, but if you want to get into learning how to program, he's got loads of videos, loads of pages, lots of reading, very helpful. So thanks to him, and thanks again to Brian Connor, who provides the voice packs. Thank you to Nick for sending this my way. Thanks to the customer for being patient, and may the force be with you.